Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca and I have got another story of sin and depravity for you, and this one's really sad. This is the heartbreaking story of Sylvia Likens. Sylvia was born January 3rd, 1949 to Betty and Lester Likens. She was the middle child of two sets of fraternal twins, her older brother and sister Diana and Danny, and then her younger brother and sister Jenny and Benny. Now, the kids helped as much as they can, but life was rough. Jobs were few and far between, and money was scarce. When she was old enough, Diana got married, had a kid, and moved out on her own and started her own little family. Meanwhile, the boys stayed behind and helped mom and dad take care of the girls. Now, in the summer of '65, Betty and Lester got a job working at a carnival. Unfortunately, this carnival took them away from town, and it was very important for them, for Sylvia and Jenny to stay in school. They were desperate for someone to watch the girls. Unfortunately, the person they chose was Gertrude Baniszewski. Gertrude's life wasn't any easier. She was born the third of 6 kids in an extremely poor family in 1929. At 16, Gertrude drops out of high school and marries a man by the name of John, who is 2 years older than her, and they have 6 kids together. John, her husband, is extremely abusive, and she manages to escape to marry Dennis, and they have 1 kid together. In total, she has 7 kids and 6 miscarriages. Unfortunately, Dennis is just as abusive to her and her child as John was. And one day, Dennis decides he doesn't want to be a dad or a husband anymore, and he walks out on the family. And that's the last we hear of him. In the summer of '65, Lester approaches Gertrude and asks her if she can watch his girls while he is away traveling with the carnival. At first, she says no, because Jenny has polio and is permanently disabled, and she sees that as being a total nuisance. But when Lester offers her $20 a week to watch the girls, which is the equivalent to almost $165 today, she can't turn it down. She needs the money. And she accepts, and the girls move in. Things go bad almost immediately. Within the first week, they're being starved. They're fed a piece of toast in the morning, nothing for dinner, or nothing for lunch, and then a small bowl of soup for dinner. And after the first week, the check doesn't arrive on time. Gertrude is convinced that the dad isn't going to send the money, and she beats the 2 girls as punishment for their dad not sending the check. The check shows up the next day. She doesn't care. She still hates the girls, is particularly unfond of Sylvia, and sets her sights in on her. Jenny, having polio and being totally disabled, can't really fight back, so she just has to sit back and watch. At some point, Gertrude's hand gets tired from beating on Sylvia, and she switches over to a metal board. This leaves scars all up and down Sylvia's backside. At some point, things started to escalate, and Gertrude wasn't the only person doing the abusing. Not only was Gertrude abusing Sylvia, her children were doing it, neighborhood kids were doing it, and they were actually charging neighborhood kids 5 cents a person to go into the basement and beat on Sylvia. At one point, Sylvia admitted to having a boyfriend at some point before she lived in the Baniszewski's house. This pissed off Gertrude. She accused her of being a prostitute and accused her of being pregnant, and then kicked her repeatedly in the crotch. It was around this same time that her kids started pushing Sylvia down the stairs. This made Gertrude laugh, and so her kids continued to do it. Gotta keep mom happy. Gertrude encouraged the kids to do whatever they wanted to Sylvia. Beat her up, use her as a punching bag, put their cigarettes out on her, cut her up, whatever. It was free game. Paula, her oldest daughter, was beating on Sylvia and broke her hand. Of course, she had to get a cast, which she then came home and used the cast to beat Sylvia. Sometimes they would force Jenny to hit and punch her sister under threat that if she didn't, she would suffer the same fate. And she did. So at some point they decided that Sylvia was no longer worthy of living among people, and they stripped her naked and threw her in the basement, where she was kept indefinitely. She was not fed very much. She was beaten really, really badly, and she lost control of her bowel movements and urinated on herself quite often. When she would defecate in the basement, they would force her to clean the basement by eating her feces. One time, after peeing on herself, Gertrude decided that she needed a bath, that she was dirty and needed to be cleansed. So they filled the clawfoot bathtub upstairs with boiling hot water, bound Sylvia's wrists and ankles, and dropped her into the boiling water. This left her obviously with burns and blisters all over her whole body, in addition to the cuts and burns from the cigarette. Gertrude rubs salt into all of her wounds. And this didn't just happen once. Sometimes it happened once a day, sometimes it happened several times a day. There was no rhyme or reason to it. It was just another method of torture. Gertrude would drag Sylvia upstairs, starving and naked, and force her to strip dance for her children. And when she struggled to do so, she was viciously beaten for it. The part of all of this that really upsets me is how many times there was an opportunity for someone to save Sylvia's life, and they friggin' didn't. Jenny wrote their older sister Diana a letter describing everything that was going on in the Baniszewski house. Not only did Diana do nothing, she called her a liar. There are some reports of Diana coming by the house later on and Gertrude shooed her away, but for the most part, Diana called her a liar. There was a neighborhood boy who was in the basement and witnessed some of the abuse, went home and told his parents what was going on, that Sylvia was being hit and kicked, and his parents said, "Oh, that's just what happens when someone gets punished sometimes." A couple moved in next door and saw the abuse on 2 separate occasions. Once at a backyard barbecue when Paula threw hot water in Sylvia's face, and on a second occasion when she came over to the house and saw Sylvia walking around with bruises and blisters. She asked about it. Gertrude said, "Oh, I did that," and then beat Sylvia with a belt. The neighbor did nothing. On multiple occasions, people heard screaming from the basement. They did nothing. At one point, nurses from the school came to the house to check on Sylvia because she hadn't been to school in weeks, and Gertrude said, "Oh, she ran away." And that was it. No further investigating. Like, that makes me so mad. The neglect of this girl was so bad that after her death, the examiner said she was so dehydrated that she couldn't even form tears anymore. Could you imagine being beaten and abused so bad that you can't even cry? Fucking heartbreaking. More than one occasion, Gertrude forced Sylvia to masturbate with a Coke bottle. The damage was so bad to her genitals that doctors said her vaginal canal was swollen almost completely shut. They told a story of one time forcing her to eat the contents of a baby diaper, or of shoveling so much condiments and spices and stuff from the kitchen onto a hot dog and force feeding Sylvia that she threw up. And once she threw up, they forced her to eat the throw up. One night, for whatever reason, Gertrude said Jenny could sleep with Sylvia in the basement. While down there, Sylvia asked Jenny for a glass of water. Jenny got it for her, and unfortunately, Sylvia peed the bed. In the morning, Gertrude accused her of being a prostitute and started to carve, "I am a prostitute and I'm proud," into Sylvia's abdomen. Halfway through, she got tired and couldn't finish, so she had the children finish carving the words into her stomach. And they did. It's about this time that they are noticing that Sylvia can't really form sentences anymore. She's covered in these infected blisters and cuts and wounds, and she's dehydrated and malnourished. Gertrude is certain Sylvia's gonna die. So she starts concocting a cover story. She dictates a letter to Sylvia to write out, basically saying that she's run away with some boys. And then they were gonna dump her in the woods and just let her die there. Well, Sylvia overheard them talking about this and she tried to escape. And this is sort of the end of everything. The first time Sylvia tries to escape is October 25th. She is found trying to escape the house, and for some reason, Gertrude tries to feed her a piece of toast. Unfortunately, Sylvia is so malnourished and so dehydrated that she can't actually eat the piece of toast. And this pisses Gertrude off, and she shoves the piece of toast in Sylvia's mouth and then beats her in the mouth with a metal rod. She hits her so hard with this metal rod, the metal rod is bent at right angles. She finished beating her, and then at the last minute, one of the neighbor boys, Hubbard, picks the rod back up and hits her one final time in the face, knocking her unconscious. And then they drag her into the basement and leave her there. At one point in the night, Sylvia wakes up and she knows that she's gonna die, and she starts screaming for help and banging on the walls. The neighbors heard her and decided not to call the cops. Of October 26th, she tries for the final time to escape the house. She's delirious, she's got brain damage, she's on the edge of death, and Gertrude stomps on her head, causes a brain hemorrhage, and she dies. It's at this point that Gertrude instructs the boys to go down to a payphone and call the cops and tell them that Sylvia has run away. When the cops get there, she says, yes, she ran away with some boys. Oh, she's in the basement. They must have brought her back and tortured and killed her in the basement. Like anyone believes that. However, Jenny whispers to the cops right before they leave, if you get me out of here, I will tell you everything that happened. And they take Jenny, and she tells them everything. Gertrude, her 2 kids, John and Paula, and then 2 neighborhood boys, Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs, are put on trial. They are prosecuted, and they are found guilty. However, this is again where the whole world fails this little girl. Gertrude spends 18 years in jail before she is released in 1985, where she gets to live her life as a free woman. She dies shortly after in 1990, but who fucking cares? She should have died in jail. The kids not only served 18 months, but they were given new names when they got out of jail so they could start their lives over again. One of them, a few years after being released, like the weight of what he had done came down on him and he ended up dying of lung cancer. Paula became a friggin' school teacher in Iowa. She was fired not too long ago from her job because it came out what she had done. But the woman who broke her hand beating a kid, tortured and mutilated a young girl, is now teaching kids the same age as Sylvia. That's the heartbreaking story of Sylvia. I've linked below some articles where you can read some additional information about this case. A lot more was done to this poor girl. It actually broke my heart to read it, so I just didn't even want to talk about it because it made me so sad, but you can definitely read about it. I've also linked a memorial website that was set up in her memory. It's a really nice website. You should check it out. They raised some money to buy her a really beautiful headstone, and her whole grave marker is just really pretty now. The reason I wanted to do this case is because I feel like she fell through the cracks. Everyone forgot about her in life. Everyone forgot about her in death, and I just want her to know that she's not forgotten. There are still people who feel for her and are happy that she's no longer in pain and that she's in a better place. And yeah, rest in peace, Sylvia. Thank you guys for checking out this video. I hope you liked it. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know in the comments what serial killer you want me to do next. And I will see you all in the next video. And remember, none of us are saints. Bye, guys.